Welcome, everyone, to our low waste menus breakout. My name is Brandon Collins. I am the lead chef for Unilever Food Solutions for North America. So I get I may know a couple people in the room. So, so if I mess up, I'm going to go hide real quickly. No. So what we're going to talk about today is low waste menus, right? And how that can be actually implemented within your operation. And I think what ends up happening, right, is at the end of the day, as we look at low waste menus, we hear a lot about pickling, fermenting, koji. Those are all very, very scary terms for an operator because at the end of the day, being able to implement those across multiple units is very hard in order to get the expertise that you need. So we're going to talk about ways that you can implement it a little bit easier in some very, very simple ways. So whether it's utilizing the whole vegetable, whenever your vegetables come in the back door, not cutting off the tops, not peeling them. The beauty about not peeling a vegetable is at the end of the day, the vast majority of the vitamins and nutrients that you're going to have in a vegetable is located in the peel. We have always been trained to take that off and discard it because it looks prettier without it on it. Unfortunately, you lose a lot of the flavor and a lot of the experience whenever it comes to that vegetable. The carrot tops are delicious. The peels of a lot of the vegetables have more nutrients in them than the actual vegetable itself. So why am I peeling this? Do I need to? Can I just utilize it in a puree? Can I utilize it whole? How can we utilize this in our operations? Can we look at fermentation and some of the new trends that are happening out there, right? You see the 2% salt brine or the lacto fermentation, which you see a lot of that on the shelves here. And how can you actually utilize that within your operation? It's something very simple and very easy to do. But at the end of the day, it's very, very simple to utilize the wasteful products that you're already doing in your operations by just not peeling something, by not taking the top off, by utilizing your spent coffee to create a sauce or something of that nature. So with that being said, I am going to stop talking because I am much better at this portion of it than I am at the talking portion. I'm going to hand it over to somebody who is way more knowledgeable about this than I am, Diego Garcia Vega. So please welcome Diego.
Thank you, Brandon. Is this on? No, now. Thank you. It's such an honor to be able to share with you a bit of one of my great obsessions, which is food waste, or as some like to call it, the food waste scandal. And you're going to realize why we call it these very quickly. So we'll start with some big figures. Do you know how much food is wasted around the world? Raise your hand for 10% of all the food that is produced. No one? 20? 30? Okay, you've done your homework? Yes, but actually it's a 40% according to the most recent and complete estimates of all the food that is produced. This is equivalent to 1/3 of the world's farmland, so we're cultivating the entire surface of Europe and India all together if those were entirely fertile lands, and we're throwing it away to the bin. You understand why we call it a scandal? This is enough food to end hunger 3 times over. So we're 8 billion people, almost 1 are still suffering from malnutrition, and we're producing food for 3 extra billion people, which is actually the population that we'll have by the end of the century. So really, it's the only way to feed the people that we will have on Earth very soon. What is wasted? What are those products? Well, we have half of our fruits, vegetables, and tubers that are wasted. We have 1/3 of all grains and seafood. We have 1/5 of all meat and dairy, which is 12 billion animals being raised and killed for nothing. And where is it happening? Well, all along the food chain, but we have almost half of it on farms. But it's not independent. Farms depend on consumers. And we're going to see how we buy is creating a lot of waste down upstream in the food chain. So a hierarchy. What should we do with food waste? First of all, we need to reduce it, not let it happen. So I'm going to be sharing some tips on how to do this. This is really the priority. But if we don't manage, we can or we must donate it to people that need it. Otherwise, we can feed livestock with it and turn it into food later on, but we're losing a lot of energy in that process. And really the last option is losing a lot of energy in the process, but turning it into compost or renewable energy. So I'm going to be focusing on the top one, at the kitchen first. Disclaimer, I'm not a chef, as many people think. I'm a biologist. I study and advocate for sustainable food systems, and I've worked with a lot of chefs in the filming of a TV series on HBO. So I'm going to be sharing a few examples by the chefs that I've worked with. Fruits and vegetables. Really all the greens of all the vegetables that we use can also be eaten, but they're routinely discarded. So we can use, for example, the beetroot leaves for salads. Brandon will show us a recipe now, a very simple and versatile recipe of how we can use literally any greens of the vegetables. And the last option, we can use it to extract flavor. We can make stocks, or even better, we can infuse oil with it, like Wim de Beer and Josh Steamer in the Netherlands showed me. With the ugly and bruised tomatoes and cucumbers, they turned it into a blend, which in my country we call gazpacho. But here, they did it to extract the water and turn these tomato salad into something much more tasty. Fruits. This is an example from Ebru Baybara, a chef from Turkey who's actually among us, so you can ask her directly. But she took the spoiled plums, peaches, and apples and turned it into a delicious dessert. Every spoiled fruit can be turned into pastry, into blends, and we should be using it all. Animal produce. You will be talking about the need to reduce animal consumption. Well, on top of that, the animals that we raise and that we kill, we have the responsibility to eat them all, to make the most out of it, like we used to in the past, really. So animal offal offers an opportunity to introduce some animal protein in more plant-based diets. This is veal brain spread in celery, so no one will notice. This is the opposite. It's a much more explicit one by Javi Estevez in Spain. All of these parts, we traditionally eat them in Spain, but presenting it like this is a challenge to culture because we need to get used to seeing what we're eating, to realizing that we're eating alive and what it means and what it weighs. The eggs that come with many fish, we can use them all. This is an unusual example with octopus by Pepe Soya, which turned out to be delicious as well. And a final example with the fish bones and skin blended, Matt Orlando in Denmark turned it into noodles. So, bread and grains. Bread always ends up as waste in kitchens, hard bread. Well, there's a few solutions as well. Here, Matt Orlando, again in Denmark, extracted all the sugar from it, which is a very complex sugar. It's not just sweet, it's also salty, it's also umami, and then reduced it and turned it into ice cream, and also made miso with the bread, and also some breadcrumbs, and so he turned it into this really good dessert. And here's an example from industry. There's a lot of waste also coming up from the industry. From beer brewing, for every 100 liters of beer, there's around 20 kilos of barley that are wasted, that are spent, and we extracted the sugar, but we have all that rest. We can make many things with it. Brandon will show us another one as well. But we usually feed livestock. And you remember the hierarchy? That's the third option. If we wanted to go up in that scale, we call that upcycling. And this is an example. We can turn it into flour. And that flour, we can turn it into burger buns, which go very well with the beer. And this is a very healthy product. It's very rich in protein, very rich in fiber. So we're giving it value again to something that we considered waste before. So here's a brief summary. But as I said, it doesn't only happen at the kitchen. This is just the tip of the iceberg. It happens before, upstream. So how can we change our supply behavior to reduce the waste that is happening before? One first tip that I identify is buy the whole produce. You're responsible for the whole thing that you're buying. If you're asking for just the fillet or just the most noble part of something, there's a lot of waste that you're not seeing, but you're also creating it. Here's an example with the cod, and here's an example with Ebru Baybara in a market in Turkey. She's holding the full lettuce, the natural full lettuce, and I'm holding the final product at the market. See, when you buy the final product, there's all of that waste upstream that you've created without knowing it. And these are usually free or cheap resources where you can get a lot of nutrition, a lot of flavor from. Another tip, build menus from the farm up. If you let the farmers grow a variety of crops in the best way they can, that best fits their system, their climate, their seasons, and then you receive what they produce and make your menus out of that, you'll reduce to the minimum the waste that they're causing, the food waste, but also the energy waste. And these are two examples of unsold byproducts. If you look close at your suppliers, you'll find that there's a lot of products that no one's buying and end up being discarded. So Jimmy Oyen in Norway, I realized that baby goats are a byproduct of the dairy industry in Norway. No one's buying them. So he takes this meat, and this is the meat he serves. Cooked in a good way, everyone loves it. Same with the fish. Albert Frank in Finland realized that the fishermen were catching a lot of fish that no one wanted, and they called it trash fish. Well, he buys a trash fish, cooks it in a good way, and has a Michelin-starred restaurant serving trash fish. Third one, there's a lot of produce that in and by itself intrinsically bear a lot of waste. So we're talking about food that ends up in the bin, but we could also be talking about that we're feeding 1/3 of the whole of the grains that we're producing around the world to animals, to then turn it into many less calories for humans. So that's also a wasteful process. Instead, we can be buying pasture-based meat, which is taking advantage of resources that we humans cannot, grass. And then there's also with fishing arts, I'm thinking particularly of bottom trawling, the main way in which we catch the shrimps. Sometimes there's up to 90% of the catch that is not the target, and those are thrown overboard back into the sea but dead. There's also a solution, there's traps, more selective methods. And last one, but not least, better planning and conserving, of course. Best conservation practices, you know, each produce has the best way of conserving. Onions, potatoes go in a cool, dark place. Bananas go on their own. Bread, straight into the freezer. It's the easiest and it tastes the same. The greens, we wrap them in paper and we put it in a plastic container on the fridge. They will last much longer. There's all these tips and we should be rigorous about them. Buying perishables more frequently. Don't overstock. That causes always a lot of waste. Monitoring, that's a very important one because we're probably wasting on and on the same things over and over and losing money because we don't know. We're not adjusting our offer to the demand. And fixed menus or less options, that's a way to adjust your demand to your offer. This is what I have, and people will be happy with it if it's taken care of. And variable portion sizes because we all see the dishes coming back half full. So let people decide how much they can eat. So here's a summary again. And really, as you saw, this is not really an option. This is an imperative. It's the only way to keep this planet livable and to feed everyone that lives in it, really. Thank you. Brandon, take it over.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and again, let's kind of put this into action a little bit, right? So, the concept of the dish, this is actually a dish that you're going to see in the report. Being from the US, there is a region in the US that is known for a certain style of pizza. It's called Detroit style pizza. So with this dish, it is a spent grain focaccia. So the idea is that you speak with your local brewers, and whenever they are done, I mean, now there's breweries everywhere. Whenever they are done with that grain, you take it, you dry it out, you then mill it and turn it into flour, or you can puree it in a Roboku, and then you create the focaccia with that flour. It is then topped with some cheese, which is just a Gouda and a mozzarella. And then it is topped with nduja. So nduja is the Calabrian sausage, right? It is usually tough cuts of pork, like the shoulder. It is then mixed with Calabrian chilies and pork fat, and then is then hung in a bung, right? So you're utilizing, again, the whole part of the animal. That is then topped with a carrot pesto, which is made with carrot tops and spinach, a little bit of Parmesan cheese, some oil, some lemon, and some avocado. So utilizing the whole carrot. And also a carrot puree that is then pureed with a little bit of Hellmann's and hot sauce, right? And the idea is that I didn't peel the carrot. I took the carrot, I cut the tops off, I used the tops for the pesto, and I used the bottoms for the puree to give you that sort of nice silky puree, and then that beautiful kind of earthy pesto. Something that's very, very simple to implement, right? It's not across the board, it's not hard to do from the beginning. It also helps from a cost standpoint, right? If I'm going to bring in carrots with the tops on, then I'm going to utilize that whole carrot. Now I can take that pesto, I can put it onto a pizza, I can put it onto a sandwich. If I'm going to use the bottom for a puree, I can serve that with fish. I can also put it on top of a pizza. I can use it as a carrot aioli to dip vegetables in. The andouille is one of those things that is really, really big in the United States. But it's one of those flavor profiles that is absolutely amazing, and it's just, to me, it's my favorite style of salumi.